today is I'm going to start by giving you an introduction of who we are. So why is the Development Finance Initiative at the UNC School of Government here today, talking about a City of Rocky Mount site. And then I'll give you an update on the Public-Private Partnerships for Housing project. So you'll hear all the details. We've already heard a lot of questions today from the group, and I hope to be able to answer a lot of these in the presentation. Then we'll talk about next steps, and then we'll open it up for a more formal question and answer session at the end of this. So the UNC School of Government is one of the largest research and advisory local government training facilities in the U.S. So on an annual basis, School of Government team is serving, I think it's 16,000 public officials across North Carolina. We are very much a nonpartisan, policy-neutral, responsive entity. And we think of ourselves as being really in the bloodstream of state and local government. We advise local governments, your elected officials, anyone here who ever gets elected, you'll probably come through our doorstep, or if you've ever worked for local government, you've probably stepped foot at the School of Government at some point. And we provide expertise on issues ranging from animal control through to real estate development. And that's really where DFI comes in. So DFI, the Development Finance Initiative, which I'll call DFI, is a program of this UNC School of Government. And we were created to provide real estate development and finance expertise for local governments. So as I said, for many, many, many years, the School of Government has been providing this expertise to local governments related to legal issues. And we had staff at School of Government getting phone calls on a regular basis saying, hey, this developer just approached us and they said that they would do XYZ if we give them $1 million. Should we do this? And the staff at the School of Government, they were able to answer the question of, can you do that? So legally, can you hand them $1 million? No. But they couldn't really answer the question of, should you be investing in this project? And so the more and more questions that were received along those lines, the more the need for DFI really emerged. We were also getting questions like, hey, and I know Rocky Mount has a lot of these really great historic buildings. Hey, we have this abandoned building. It's on the city books. We've been sitting on it for 20 years, and nobody wants to invest in it. What do we do about this? And again, the local School of Government could say, well, this is what you can do, but not what you should do. So enter DFI to answer those questions about what local governments should do when it comes to responding to developer interest in their community, but also in attracting the type of private investment that really meets the public interests. I put this thing down for some reason. So as you can see, we worked in communities all across North Carolina. And for that reason, the North Carolina Emergency Management approached DFI when they were trying to think of a different approach to leverage their state recovery money to attract private investment into some of these communities that were struggling to see any kind of investment related to housing. And that's key here. So this was created to build affordable housing for low and moderate income households in communities impacted by Hurricane Matthew. So as most of you, or a lot of you know, Edgecombe County is one of the 4 most impacted communities in Eastern Carolina, in North Carolina. So the process that was created for this P3s for Housing program, which is what we've called it, so Public-Private Partnerships for Housing, is that the first step was really to identify sites suitable for affordable housing development in these communities impacted by Hurricane Matthew. And the key here is we're talking about resiliency. We're not talking about rebuilding homes in the flood zone so that they continue to be at risk of flooding over and over again. We're talking about finding sites outside the 100-year, outside the 500-year, where we could talk about long-term rental options for the low and moderate income households. The next step in the Public-Private Partnerships for Housing is to do a feasibility analysis, which which is the core of what DFI's work is. So what is actually feasible? What will actually attract a private developer to do the type of development we're talking about? And what does the public investment need to be to make this work? And the last step in the process is, we don't just hand over a report. We actually go out and we find a private development partner to execute on the type of projects that we're talking about. So for the P3s for housing, when thinking about where to locate these projects and to select sites, we established a set of criteria. And not surprisingly, since we're talking about hurricane recovery, we wanted sites that were outside the 100 and 500-year flood zone. We wanted a minimum of 48 units. We're talking about high-impact development. Public ownership was key here, or a clear path to site control. So maybe private ownership where the local government had been having previously conversations with that owner and was in a place where they could move on site control. Really important here was existing connections to public utilities. That can take a lot of time and a lot of money. And one of the goals here was to move pretty efficiently and pretty quickly. We wanted sites that were suitable for residential development. It may not surprise you that often people come to us and they say, hey, we've got this great site, and it's just an industrial site in the middle of nowhere where you're not thinking about residential development in any way. And then, of course, we wanted developments that were going to meet the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency's site requirements. For this project, we're talking about using tax credits, and those are federal tax credits to develop these projects, along with state recovery money, so not local funds. And so any site that we selected had to meet the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency's site requirements. So, as you know, and as I've mentioned to a lot of you today, the City of Rocky Mount actually submitted multiple sites for consideration. Many that met this criteria, however, there were challenges here and there for different reasons. One example of North Carolina Housing Finance Agency's requirements is proximity of amenities. So I've got a whole list here, but it includes things, the neighborhood, the quality of the neighborhood, bus transit within walking distance. And you can see here the site, which is, if anybody doesn't know, by the way, the site we're talking about is right across the street. And you can see it here right in the middle. And we're looking for grocery stores, pharmacies, health centers, shopping within a mile or a mile and a half from the site. So this is the site. It is an Edgecombe County side of the city of Rocky Mount, really in the core of downtown. So a zoom in onto that site there. These are the city-owned parcels only. So that parcel has multiple ownership, including Edgecombe Community College. This would not include the Edgecombe Community College site. And on February 25th, something key here is that the City of Rocky Mount voted that they were prepared to sell or lease the land for the development of affordable housing if the right development partner is identified. So they have not already agreed, hey, we're not selling it tomorrow. That's not what they agreed to do. They're not saying, hey, it has to be this. They're saying, if we find the right partner, and this is the right project, we're comfortable moving forward with affordable housing on this site. So that first step, identifying the site. The second step is DFI's feasibility analysis. So what you see here is what is a kind of typical pre-development process, feasibility analysis for a private development partner, or at least three parts of it are. First thing we do is we look at the market. So what is the demand for the type of product we're talking about here, in this case affordable housing? So how many households were displaced by Matthew, and how much unmet need exists in this community still? We then look at the site. So what can actually fit on a site? How many units can you actually build? How much parking is required? Stormwater, all those really boring things. All of that goes into this analysis. Then we do a financial analysis. And this is where we determine, okay, for a private developer to take on this project, they would need to achieve these returns, or in this case, this development fee, And these kind of financials would need to be in order. We do that work, just kind of a base case, and we figure out what is the gap. So if the state wants to see this project happen in other communities, if our local government partner wants to see this project happening, what is the public investment that needs to be provided? And so in this case, to be very clear, the state would be providing that gap financing. And so of course with affordable housing, there's almost always a gap. What DFI does in their process that is different from what a private developer would do is that we incorporate the public interests into any one of these. So we are constantly in conversation with staff and council, and we come to you in these community meetings and we ask to hear from you what it is you're looking for in this kind of development. And at the crux of all of that is what we call a feasible project. I'll show you some of the work here, some of our key findings for that market analysis portion. Post-Hurricane Matthew flood impact, there were over 530 homes with major to severe damage from Matthew. Roughly half of those were low-income renters. There's about an estimated 450 renters with moderate damage, which means a lot of them were able to stay, or most stayed in their home. They still remain at risk of flooding, and that is key. The majority, again, here are low and moderate income households. We also needed to look at what the unmet demand for affordable housing is in Rocky Mount in general, right? Not just Hurricane Matthew, but what's the demand for affordable housing here? You'll hear me talk about AMI a lot. That is the area median income. And technically, the area median income in Edgecombe County is $53,000 for a family of four. For a two-person household at 60% AMI, so you've heard me, and if you look at the poster, we're talking about a 60% AMI targeted project here, potentially. That would be an income of $25,000, $26,000, right? So if you are a single mom with a child, single dad, just a couple with only one working partner. You could be working as a firefighter. You could actually be working as a child care worker. And you would qualify, nursing assistant, for example, and you would qualify for this housing. DFI identified unmet demand, and so we base this on severely cost-burdened households. That means these are households that are spending more than 50% of their income on housing costs. And right now in Rocky Mount, there are about 1,700 rental units in demand for units for households that earn 30% of AMI or below. And between that 30% and 80% segment, there are about 1,300 rental units in demand. 45% of these households, these severely cost-burdened households, are small families. And 24% are single elderly households. An additional, and this is 2015 data, we believe that this has actually increased over time, an additional 200 households are living in substandard housing. That means they don't have full plumbing, they don't have full kitchen facilities, and about 145 in overcrowded units. That means more than 2 people per room in a unit. We know that market rents in Rocky Mount, as you see more and more development, market rents are going up and it's outpacing your income growth. When that happens, that means the demand will only go up. So, that was the market analysis piece in our analysis. How many units can we build, should we build, and for whom? The site analysis, as I said before, is just a test fit, right? We look at the development limitations to a site. So you can have lots of ideas, but if you're building in Rocky Mount in a historic district, we can't go up 6 floors. So part of our analysis is determining how high can we go, how many units can we fit, how wide can we go, what's required. Part of the purpose of the site analysis is not to create a kind of final guiding document. So if you've had a chance to look at this, this is not what this project is going to look like. This is to say, hey, we're looking for a more urban development, right? We want this to fit the character of downtown Rocky Mount. And so what you see here is an idea amassing to see, can we fit that kind of project, that kind of design on the site that we have in front of us. Again, no architectural details involved here. So here it is, the colors, they wouldn't have been my choice, but they indicate the unit size that we looked at and fitting in there. This is 60 units, affordable at 60% AMI. The rents on these projects, and I think there's often a misconception around these tax credit and affordable housing projects, is that they are free, that it is public housing, that tenants don't pay anything and don't need to work. Rents are still between $400 and $550 a month. So it is not free rent. The total development cost here is about $8.5 to $9 million to develop this project. I just wanted to show some examples of LIHTC development in North Carolina. You guys may recognize this of Beale Street. What's really important here is that part of the reason these costs seem pretty high is that the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency actually establishes very strict guidelines for tax credit projects, which is what we would be pursuing for this. And they require certain high quality materials and construction methods that have to be used across the state in order to be awarded these projects. They must also meet green building standards. So in communities where utilities are high, this is incredibly important. And the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency remains involved throughout the 30-year affordability of this project and monitors these projects to ensure that they remain compliant. So they don't allow projects to fall into shambles. They're making sure that they still maintain these high standards. So these are just some other examples of projects in North Carolina. Good finishes, solid quality materials. So what's the next step from here? So DFI, we would go out and solicit a qualified private development partner for this project. We are going to look far and wide. So our work here, part of what DFI does, as you saw, we've done these projects all across North Carolina. We have a lot of relationships with developers all across the state, but we are also constantly working to expand those relationships and find developers that meet the needs of these communities. And so part of our work here will be going out and finding qualified development partners and having a competitive process where we will go out and say, submit your qualifications, let us know why you're interested in this project, and show us your experience. Show us that you have experience developing and, key here, managing successful projects in North Carolina and beyond. The city council will have a vote on who that development partner could be from that group that submits, and so will the state. So the city and the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resilience will have a vote here and select a preferred partner. When that partner is selected, that doesn't mean the partner is going to go off and just start doing the work. They'll enter into MOU negotiations. And this is the point in which the city and NCORP really sets the stage and says, hey, these are our requirements. This is what we're going to need from you as a developer in this process. And the developer does the same thing, and they come to an MOU. And that developer will then have a period of exclusivity to invest money to see what kind of project can be done. The pre-development process for the developer after that will include finalizing the plan and design. They're not just, it's not that you'll never see them again. You are going to have an opportunity, just like in any development in your community, in any planning process, where the city will have to review any plans. That will still happen. And then the developer is expected to go out and secure project financing. So that's going to be the low-income housing tax credits and the state funds. Again, we have not asked the city to contribute any additional funds to this project. Their kind of skin in this game is the land, which is critical, let me say, to this development. And to be very clear, this is a private developer that will own and operate the development for the life of the project and its affordability period. this is kind of a rough timeline of what the next, 8 months looks like. We were hoping, if the council and staff is comfortable with us moving forward, to put out a solicitation by the end of April and selecting a partner in June to move pretty quickly to get to a development breaking ground the following year, in June, potentially second quarter, third quarter of 2020.